I wanted to apologize with all my heart. I said I didn't love you. That wasn't true.
All great tales start with a promise. And for the Brown family, that promise was unity. The cameras of TLC's sister wives hawked audiences an image of 4 women, 1 man, and a common vision of faith, family, and financial sacrifice. It was a social experiment clothed in love and travail, a communal ledger where everyone gave according to ability and took according to need. Janelle, the numbers-hungry wife with a government salary and benefits, channeled her earnings into this communal fund. Christine, the homey heart of the family, contributed her sweat raising 12 kids, maintaining a crazy household, and giving Kodys freedom to chase his dreams. Even Mary, the first legal wife, had what she could give while riding out emotional storms. And then Robyn, the 4th wife, whom the show presented as the new beginning, the romance that grew the family. But behind the romance, there was a brutal financial reality. Robyn came with tens of thousands of dollars in debt and 3 children to feed. What was intended as a fresh start soon became a financial time bomb. The system, already thinly stretched, started to distort. Kodys relabeled Robyn's debt as the family's rather than her burden. Her financial baggage became incorporated into the so-called family pot. And for Janelle and Christine, who had already given so much, this moment silently tipped the scales of power. The Holy Ledger was no longer one of fairness. It was one of favoritism. Viewers watched laughter, weddings, and optimistic plans on television. But off camera, anger simmered. Christine and Janelle's sacrifices were being spent not on shopping for groceries, not on paying mortgages, but on lingerie shopping excursions and debt eliminations. The illusion of the family's supposed equality was starting to break down, and while the fans were convinced that they were seeing a plural family figure out contemporary life, they were really seeing the first act of what would ultimately be revealed as a $1.7 million scam wrapped in plain sight. When the Browns relocated their family from Utah to Las Vegas, the public narrative was straightforward. Flee persecution, begin anew, forge a future as one. But as with all masterful deceptions, reality was hidden behind glossy platitudes and moral rationales. The relocation was not just emotional, it was economic. Under one roof in Lehi, Utah, the family resided. All bills, all expenses, all expenditures were open. You couldn't keep a grocery receipt secret when everyone used the same fridge. In Las Vegas, though, they bought 4 different houses, each wife having her own mortgage, her own bills, her own walls. Kodys couched this in terms of independence, a present of freedom. In truth, it was the birth of financial secrecy, an atmosphere in which money could be moved unobtrusively, where debt could be concealed, and where the so-called family pot turned into a shadow of its former self. This is where the fissures started to open. Janelle, ever the reliable breadwinner, worked round the clock to meet her ends, all while pouring money into the group. Christine stretched her unpaid work even more, juggling childcare with the added expense of separate homes. Mary, desperate to keep her position, juggled part-time employment and side businesses. And Robyn, somehow, even with her former debts and lack of stable job, she was able to obtain an equal home to the others, a result that sparked questions both on and off the screen. The actual game was not the move itself, but the flow of money. The TLC paychecks, now big enough, became the family's golden cash. But rather than being shared evenly, insiders say they were channeled to pay for one acute issue, Robyn's financial demons. Her debts were quietly paid off, her credit restored, her down payment secured. And while others witnessed joyful confessions and home tours, Christine and Janelle watched their sacrifices fade into another woman's foundation. Then My Sister Wife's Closet appeared, presented as a family venture to bring the wives together and earn financial freedom. But the purported business became a drain. Those who afterward analyzed its model called it unviable from the beginning, a vanity operation, a tax haven, above all, a funnel. Money from the family went in. Merchandise accumulated, unsold costs were written off. And who profited? Robyn, whose name and face were on the enterprise, and who, by whispers of those who knew the family, dominated the accounts disproportionately. In Vegas, Kodys honed the shell game. In public, the family was more unified than ever before. Behind closed doors, the women learned the reality. The one family financial system was a myth. Janelle and Mary gained independence. Christine worked herself to the bone. Robyn stayed dependent, but safe. The Vegas years were not simply about survival. They were about reconfiguring, setting the stage for the ultimate phase of consolidation. And the receipts from the time show the master plan for what was to come. A gradual, systematic draining of money from Christine and Janelle and into Robyns and Kodys' pockets. The Vegas deception was the warm-up act. The headliner would take place in Flagstaff, Arizona. There, the robbery would cease to be hypothetical. It would become impossible to ignore. Flagstaff was marketed as a fantasy, an opportunity to get out of the desert heat of Las Vegas, to reside in the mountains, and to create at last the family compound they had been discussing for years. It looked on paper like the Browns' moment of victory, a large piece of property named Coyote Pass, big enough for each wife to have her own house, all connected by common land. Kody talked of legacy, of sowing roots, of building something their children would be able to leave to. But behind the pitch was the riskiest financial bet the family had ever made, and the stage on which the $1.7 million heist would ultimately crystallize. Buying 4 individual homes in Flagstaff before anything was ever built on Coyote Pass left the family up to their eyeballs in debt. Christine was pushed into a small house she could hardly afford. Janelle was trapped in rental limbo, holding on to the hope for her parcel of land. Mary, already marginalized, was quietly hidden away in yet another short-term environment. And Robyn, she got a whopping $900,000 home, complete with expensive upgrades and room her children barely occupied. The disparity was stark. The woman who came into the family in debt now lived in comfort, and the wives who had borne the brunt of expenses were left thin. And the deeds, when property records became public. Enthusiasts and detectives alike observed something disturbing. The split of land and ownership was not even. Robyn's stake, being connected to Kody, weighed much more heavily. Janelle and Christine, after all those years of investment, had less power. More appalling, sources said. When Christine started complaining about the disparity, Kody dismissed her with a cold mantra. This is for the family. Which families, though? The fissures broadened further when Janelle and Christine were finding it difficult to pay their own mortgages, while Kody poured resources towards Robyn's mortgage. Janelle supposedly tapped into her retirement account just to keep her head above water, a heartbreaking sacrifice that dissipated into land she would never fully own. Christine, worn out and disenchanted, saw she had worked decades of unpaid labor only to have her efforts converted into equity for another. Robyn, meanwhile, stood firm in her innocence, presenting her home as a family necessity and insisting she had no more than anyone else. But receipts painted a different picture. Bank deposits, deed recordings, and mortgage payments all heading in the same direction. The lion's share of fiscal security was moving in the direction of Robyn and Kody. And as much as Christine and Janelle vented their frustrations on camera in coded, measured terms, the reality was festering below the surface. Flagstaff was to be the land of dreams. It instead became the smoking gun. The division of the assets was no longer theoretical. It was tangible, quantifiable, irrefutable. For years, shared sacrifice had concealed Christine and Janelle's contributions. Behind the tree-lined streets of Flagstaff, the mask fell off. The fortune of 2 women had been drained into the fortress of 1. And while the world didn't yet realize the full amount, the groundwork for the $1.7 million robbery was now cemented, literally, in deeds and titles. But that was just the lead-up. The real unraveling would occur when Christine and Janelle ceased quietly making sacrifices and started asking the forbidden question: where did the money go? Every con, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually collapses under its own weight. For the Browns, that collapse began with whispers: Christine's late-night confessions, Janelle's quiet doubts, Mary's simmering resentment. What had once been tolerated as Kody's vision became unbearable when the financial reality could no longer be ignored. Bills piled up, mortgages fell into arrears, and whenever the wives requested explanation, Kody dodged, insisting that all concessions were for the family. But Christine and Janelle started to pool what they knew, and what they found out was appalling. Their total concessions: Janelle's retirement cashed out, Christine's decades of uncompensated household work, where underwriting Robyn's stability. The tipping point was Coyote Pass. Christine, once having envisioned her house on the property, recognized she would never lay eyes on it. The land was encumbered in debt, its ownership unbalanced, and Kodys' interest in finishing the compound had dissipated. He talked instead of Robyn's residence, of providing for her children's futures, of creating something secure for them. Christine and Janelle left to hang in the balance. Christine at last uttered what no one else had the courage to say. She would no longer give for a dream that only served Robyn. When she announced she was leaving, Kodys reacted not in love, but in clinical legalism, recalling to mind she had no deed, no equity, no claim. Her life's work, her efforts, her sacrifices, all gone, swallowed up in a system she could not control. Janelle shortly thereafter was confronted with the same ugly arithmetic. Her savings account had been drained. Her investments into the family pool had disappeared into property she did not own. And as she began to recede, Kodys charged her with betrayal, with threatening the family. But loyalty, she came to see, had become a one-way street, her resources moving outward, nothing moving in. It was at this location that Christine and Janelle started discreetly meeting with lawyers and financial advisors. The results were unequivocal. Documents uncovered that over a span of years, approximately $1.7 million in aggregate assets, salary, savings, retirement accounts, equity, had been channeled disproportionately into Robyn's name, Robyn's mortgage, Robyn's security. What had been touted as family unity was revealed as accumulation of wealth. On screen, there were tears, histrionic dialogue, and Kodys' angry insistence that Christine was betraying him. Off screen, the books were open, a pattern of organized transfer, a robbery masquerading as sacred order. Christine walked first, retaining her dignity while leaving behind her economic sacrifices. Janelle walked afterwards, her independence fought for after years of giving up. Mary hung around, but the reality was indisputable. The so-called family pot had been depleted, and its funds funneled into Robyn's stronghold. The boiling point was not a single moment, but 1,000. The mortgage payments, the deeds, the retirement funds, the TLC paychecks, all converging to the same conclusion. Christine and Janelle had been stolen from, not with violence, but with faith, loyalty, and trust. And yet, despite Kodys and Robyn's ongoing attempts to portray themselves as the victims of betrayal, the figures spoke otherwise. The family, once vowed to be equal, now had its hierarchy exposed. Kodys and Robyn at the top, protected by legal documents and money games. Christine and Janelle at the bottom, left without the fortunes they created. But it would only require a judge's gavel to endow this quiet robbery with a name. In each betrayal story, there is a point when the curtain comes down, the illusion is dispelled, and the truth stands revealed before the world. The Browns came not on the stage of a TLC show, but in the court of law, at the mercy of a judge who was unfazed by family legends or television reality hype. Christine and Janelle, exhausted from years of having to remain silent, finally presented the proof: bank statements, deed transfers, financial records that exposed the orchestrated draining of their finances. And when placed together, the documents created an unmistakable picture: a $1.7 million pipeline from the pockets of Christine and Janelle into the coffers of Robyn and Kodys. The judge's decision was not merely a judicial verdict. It was an epiphany. Terms such as exploitation, inequity, and mismanagement reverberated throughout the courtroom, affirming what Janelle and Christine had long understood but were unable to establish on their own. Robyn's mansion, Kodys' self-selected stronghold, had been constructed not out of love or justice, but upon the shoulders of women who risked everything and gained nothing. The ruling revealed the family pot for what it was: a money mirage, an instrument of domination, a mechanism to rob the many for the advantage of the few. For viewers of Sister Wives, the news struck with the force of a thunderclap. The family that had taught people to live in harmony had been shown to be a system of favoritism and economic exploitation. Christine came out not only as a wife who deserted her husband, but as a whistleblower who had shattered the code of silence. Janelle, previously the unassuming provider, stood at last in the light, exonerated for her sacrifice and bravery. And Robyn, one who had been painted as the romantic innocent, was revealed as the one who profited from the theft. The consequences were monumental. Trust between the wives, precarious at best, collapsed entirely. Kodys, the patriarch who had once claimed to hold them all together, was rebranded in the public imagination as an exploiter. And for the first time, the Browns' tale ceased to be about plural marriage, or religion, or love. It became a cautionary fable of power, greed, and betrayal. The gavel fell, and with it, so did the illusion. Christine and Janelle's sacrifices had not been in vain. They had been documented, tallied, and now finally recognized. The verdict rendered what fans had long whispered. The family pot was a robbery, and Robyn's empire was constructed from ill-gotten gain. Ultimately, the Browns' grand experiment in harmony was a masterclass in exploitation. The promise of equality crumbled under the rug of favoritism, greed, and manipulation. And while the show might go on, its legacy is irreparably altered, not as a tale of all-consuming love, but as the history of a $1.7 million betrayal uncovered at last.